Hello everyone, Burb here. I didn't realize there was a double banner coming out in a couple days. Side Games has decided to put it in the top of the month where most of the things in this game are being released and happening. So it's quite busy, but I did want to make sure I get these character guides out as soon as possible. I do try to get them out before the banner is actually released, but I think Saiyan Sky may drag a little bit. But a lot of people are already talking about Saiyan Sky Ballroom, and I haven't seen many people talk about Fuji Kiseki Ballroom. So for the people who do enjoy Fuji Kiseki and want to know whether this character is viable, this guide is for you. This is a way too in-depth guide, which means that I try to compile as much as possible about this character, about the skin of this character, and put it all into one singular presentation. So without further ado, let's begin. For the banner review itself, if you're an Oshi player and you need a bit more validation, there's a lot of good things going for this character. There's nothing meta-defining to put out first and foremost. However, she is a very easy and comfy pace chaser to build. She comes with a lot of good pace chaser skills, including one that's quite hard to get on a pace chaser at the moment. Her ultimate is inheritable, meaning it works on the maps that it works for her herself. It is a 0.25 ultimate, not a 0.15 ultimate, which means it has additional value. In addition, she is on the banner with Saiyan Sky Ballroom, so you may have just gotten the character just from pulling for Saiyan Sky Ballroom. And if you go to Pity trying to pull for this character and you end up pulling for one or the other characters, you can get the other character and use the rest of those carrots via the Pity system. So your 30,000 carrots does not go to waste. So perfectly fine banner to pull. Obviously, use your pull plan. If you're an Oshi player, of course, this character is viable in the maps that she's viable. Just to note that regular Fuji Kiseki is selectable on the first anniversary selector if you haven't used it yet. She's normally, I think, forced into the frontrunner position. This was more based and tailor-made for pace chasers. Fuji Kiseki regular is more of a general mile horse that gets stretched into the various roles as well. So let's talk about Fuji Kiseki Ballroom. Just like regular Fuji Kiseki, she was intended as a turf mile pace chaser. However, she is purposely built very, very flexibly, meaning she can run any distance that you want. She also can be forced into dirt, meaning you can get 4 dirt parents, get her up to B, and just hope for a singular spark to get her to A. And you can even run her as either a front runner, which a lot of people decide doing for the regular Fuji Kiseki, or a late surger, which I don't necessarily see too much value in. But this one in particular is really built to just be a pace chaser. So if you like pace chasing, this is the type of Fuji Kiseki that you will enjoy. For her stat bonuses, she has some incredible stat bonuses. 8% speed, 8% wit, 14% power means that your wit taps have 16% bonus and your speed taps have 21% bonus, which is incredible because most times you want to press the speed or wit button, especially on shorter tracks where you don't really care about stamina, which is where she thrives. You're just hitting speed, wit, and power, and you're getting a boost on all 3 of those, which is a lot more than a lot of characters can say. For standard builds, Make a New Track has screwed up all the builds because race bonus is sort of above everything else right now. But generally, you just want to run the speed, power, wit deck. You can also run the Guts Max deck. There's nothing wrong with it, but I would say just try 2-2-2 and you should hit your minimum stats like almost every time because she's boosting all 3 of those stats. The Guts Maxing build is also good on her because she has that speed and power bonus. This means that when you press the Guts button, the 2 stats you're actually looking for when doing the Guts build will be boosted as well. And also because you're sacrificing wit normally in this build a little bit, you can also just get a little bit of bonus wit because of it. So it's quite a flexible character that's really sort of purpose built for Make a New Track. In addition, the fact that she does have the Mile A aptitude as well as the long E means you don't really need. I mean, you can just run the short mile medium track schedule, but you can also just force the long if you want to go the full route as well, if you're going to try to go for the next long CM, which I believe there's one more. Now, those are her stat bonuses. It's pretty simple in Make a New Track. The 2 builds that are good, she really, really helps. Her ultimate, Ravissant, that's French, so that's probably not the way to pronounce it, says, when passing another racer on the front part of the pack, on the final corner or later, perform a dazzling display that greatly increases velocity for a moderate duration. What this is saying is final corner, change order 1 time less than 0, and order rate 40 or less, meaning if it's the final corner or later, this is, of course, the Aries Cup CM. It will proc anywhere at this point that you satisfy the other conditions. The other conditions being change order 1 time, meaning, hey, you need to pass somebody. Less than 0 means you are passing somebody. If you ever see a greater than 0, it means you are being passed. Passing somebody is an advantageous condition, meaning that you have, in the late race, you have hit your acceleration and are currently passing those who have not hit their acceleration. So this is very likely in the situations where you're winning to be a condition that procs very fast. Now, you're allowed to be in 4th position, and because this is after, I believe because this is after this condition in the order, it means it first checks if you pass somebody and then checks if you are in 4th position or better, which means I think you can pass into 4th position, and this is perfectly fine, okay? So you can be anywhere from 4th to passing into 1st. Now, notably, if you're in 1st, it's very difficult to pass somebody because you would have to have somebody pass you, and then you would have to then pass them again, which is unlikely to happen. That's why this is more of a pace chaser version of Fuji Kiseki, whereas Lights of Vaudeville also does work in 1st position, which is why she's generally forced into the front runner role. So, pace chasers, even late surges and end closers, this is quite a good ultimate to have because in the situations that you're going to win, you're going to pass somebody into 4th position at some point in the late race. In the long tracks, it may be too late, but honestly, we're taking Triumphant Pulse in the long tracks for the Inherit still. So as long as you're in 4th place before 200 meters, you're perfectly fine. And if you're not in 4th place by 200 meters, it's either a ridiculously clustered pack or you ain't winning that race anyway. So I think her ultimate is rather universal, and it's a 0.25 as well. For her ultimate's duration, if you do succeed in everything, it is a whopping 4-second 0.45. Now, this is comparable to Barcarola Blessings, which is TM Opera O, but also the other passing ultimate that a lot of people use is Symboli Rudolph. Now, Symboli Rudolph is 20% better, having an additional second. It's 25%, sorry, because it's another additional 25%. However, you have to remember, Symboli Rudolph is one of the best ultimates in the game, 1, and 2, it requires 3 passes and not 1. In pace chasing, there are situations where there just isn't 3 people by the final corner in the situations where you're winning that you will be able to pass. Symboli Rudolph is a lot better for late surgers and end closers because of the additional second, but that doesn't mean that this is bad on late surgers or end closers. And also, this is more tailor-made for pace chasers because you only have to pass a singular person. So that is the trade-off you're doing, is 20% effectiveness going down, right? And then you are in exchange procking it rather early. Now, that may be a problem on certain CM tracks. We will talk about those situations. Her Inherit is basically the same as Barcarola. It is a slightly shorter duration of the standard 0.25 times 3 that we see for the best ultimates in the game. So it is basically the second tier. It's 0.6 rather than 0.75. So that is her ultimate. Let's talk about careers and events as I grab a drink of water. So, her career. She has the same flexible career, I believe, as regular Fuji Kiseki has, in that after Act 1, which I believe it ends at the Seksuki show, you get to either choose to go the mile track or the medium-long track. Now, the medium-long track, you don't necessarily have to win the Kakuga show. First of all, this is all disabled in Track Blazer, so this is for when we get back into Grand Live. You can choose the mile races in which you have to get 5th and 3rd respectively, or you can choose the Triple Crown in which you have to get 5th and participate in the Kakuga show. Now, if you decide to go the Triple Crown route and you win the Triple Crown, you get some bonus hints towards Prepared to Pass as well as some additional stats as well. So it is generally good to do this if you are forcing her into the long position because you will be able to beat the Kakuga show. You also have another secret event that's not in Track Blazer. All these secret events are disabled in Track Blazer. That if you win the Tatsu Kenyan as well as win at least 3 sprint or mile G1 races, you will get a mood up as well as some unyielding spirit. I believe this procs after the 3rd one that you do. You, of course, have the Tatsumaki Kenan, the Yasuda Kenan, and then you can choose either the Sprinter Stakes or the original Mile CH that comes up as well. Or if you, for some reason, are forcing dirt, you can choose the Champions Cup as well. So those are your options for that. If you do, you get a bonus Unyielding Spirit, which is basically just a mid-race speed skill that can happen anywhere in a mile track. If you decide to do the Japan Cup and the Tazaraka Kenan, if you end up winning her Tenno show, which is required, and you end up forcing her long into winning the Arima Kenan as well, you do get some more bonus hints for preferred position, but more importantly, another 30 stats as well. For her regular character events and costume events, she does have right-handed, disorient, as well as a choice between unyielding spirit and practice perfect, which is usually better in the mid-race or the mid-game, or a charming status chance. So it's random, so it probably happens about 1 out of every 4 times. But these skills, disorient is pretty much unusable because vision doesn't really do that much right now. Right-handed is obviously good on right-handed tracks, and of course unyielding spirit is good on mile tracks when you're building her like that. For skills, her innate skills, we talked about her event skills that are disabled in Track Blazer, except for these costume ones. Mile corners is obviously good on mile tracks. Prepared to pass is good on tracks in which Speedstar and her ultimate both are good, which I will go over. It's on pretty much every mile track, every sprint track, every long track, and most medium tracks, but there's a few exceptions, and it depends on the track. Shrewd Step is a little bit interesting. As a commenter did on my previous video, Shrewd Step has a tech in that what it does is because it increases your acceleration, and it's most likely if you're not in the first gate, you will move into the first gate or second gate. That's the goal, and that will trigger Shrewd Step early, which makes it sort of like a groundwork proc for pace chasers. Now, the problem with this is that you will be in front of the other pace chasers, but you are risking PDM, which means that if you get too close to those front runners and those front runners aren't accelerating fast enough, you will basically be put into a mode that lowers your velocity below the other pace chasers that haven't bumped into them. So you are gambling with pace down mode, but hypothetically, if you don't get pace down, or you combine this with like an Uma stand, hypothetically, you could, if you get lucky, basically be in front of all the other pace chasers. So that is the little tech. Otherwise, it's not particularly useful outside of that. Now, her golds, Tantalizing Trick is a debuff that is a minus 0.03, which is more than a normal debuff, but unfortunately, it only happens to rushed runners. Now, because we are in a meta where wit is going to be high, rushed is only going to have about a 9 to about 10.5% chance, depending on if people are getting 1200 to 900 wit. So for the one person who's unlucky, it has a minus 0.03 stamina drain, which I believe is for 5 seconds additional. So it is quite powerful in that particular trick. But the thing is that people are already in these medium tracks going and fighting against debuffers and building them against it. So you're screwing over one person who may have already been dying to other situations. So it's not necessarily the best thing to do unless you're building a pure debuff set. And even then, you would need something like Dominator at this point in the game. So it's not the most useful skill. However, Speedstar is the skill you get from Fine Motion. It's a decent late race speed skill that is just a little bit too overcosted for what it does, but it's still a perfectly fine skill to take. And especially in Make a New Track where we are getting a lot of skill points, it's usually one that is worth doing it. Also, it has the same conditions essentially, except for the pass amount of Fuji Kiseki's ultimate. It picks a random point rather than doing a pass. So the situations where Fuji Kiseki ult's good is the situations where Speedstar is good. This is the big one. She is the first character who innately comes with head-on without having to go through any hoops or any events or anything. Hopefully that's correct when I said that, because the last time I said it, it wasn't. But seriously, she has head-on. It's one of the hardest skills to get on Pace Chasers. There's going to be gold head-on coming out on a power card, which is good if you're borrowing it, but then we're going to stop using power cards after that, so it's a little bit tough. But she just comes with it, which means you don't have to get it through parents. And this is what makes her a comfy Pace Chaser to build, okay? So this character is comfort for Pace Chasers. That's what she is built around. All right, so let's talk about the timings. This goes for Prepared to Pass, and this also goes for Fuji Kiseki Ultimate. On Aries Cup, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for the final corner to be sufficiently away from the spurt. So if the spurt is sufficiently away, which means if you hit your acceleration on perfect proc or near perfect proc, you get to max speed by the time this ultimate will proc. Now, Prepared to Pass can proc as late as here, and her ultimate can proc at any point, but in the situations where you're winning, you are hitting an acceleration, and then you are passing somebody pretty immediately. So in this situation, the Aries, it is slightly clipped, but it is not that bad. If you're hitting like a No Stopping Me or a Nimble Navigator, you will be pretty much at max speed, and this makes it pretty close to what is like a Narita Bryan ultimate. The thing is with Taurus is that the final corner is so close to the spurt in which it is almost completely eaten by the Excel zone, at least in theory. So if you are passing somebody, I know there's like Christmas, this is a Christmas augury map, but if you are passing somebody, you are going to see pretty much no effect of it because you are not getting any acceleration from this and you're just still working on getting to your target speed, okay? Gemini, this goes for all miles pretty much because the final corner is here in the mid-race, is that you are looking for a slight late proc so that it can go and speed carry over. So in miles and sprints, her ultimate becomes a speed carryover mid-race ultimate that is a final corner ultimate, which is the best timing. That's why Speed Star is also so good on miles, because it can decide to proc at the late race and speed carry over into the entire mile, final spurt of the mile track. When we get back to Cancer, again, we are getting back into a situation where the final corner is just so close to the spurt where you're not at max speed yet when her ultimate starts, so it is getting eaten by the acceleration zone as well. So the things that you're looking for in whether or not Fuji Kiseki is a quote-unquote good character to run in the viability is that if the spurt is far enough away from the corner itself, which is generally in shorter mediums in the mile tracks, the sprint tracks, and the long tracks. One more, the sprint track, just to show it, has one of the best timings because if it procs here, I believe it is near guaranteed, because if you proc it just the slightest bit late, the duration should carry into the acceleration zone, and this has a ridiculously short spurt, which means speed carryover will be very, very good in this case. All right, affinities. So, this character, for parenting, unfortunately, it's not a situation where she has a bunch of high 30s, but her global ratings, her best one is Gold City. Gold City has a 26. It gets down a little bit to like the 23s and 22s, so it's not the absolute best parent in the world, but again, her ultimate is useful. You do have options of Dia Scarlet, you have Sakura Chiono O, and of course Agnes Digital, who has high affinity with a lot of people, and you have Taiki Shuttle and El Condor Pasa, which is more notable for the other direction, meaning that as a Fuji Kiseki player, you can put, usually in the mile tracks, you can put Taiki Shuttle Ultimate and El Condor Pasa Ultimate in the ults that they work, and they have high affinity with each other, so you get also their skills that they grab. So this will be a triangle that you will use on a decent amount of tracks as well. Okay? So in conclusion, this character doesn't have any meta implications, but she is one of the more comfy pace chasers to build. This is one of the few characters that they've specifically built for pace chaser that actually functions as a pace chaser and isn't easily forced into another role, which is sort of interesting because they haven't done this since like Meisho Doto, and Doto is more of an acceleration ultimate high roll, and this is just like a consistent, nice, like whiteboard to put your skills on. So if you enjoy this character, feel free to pull on it and enjoy Fuji and her Kisekis. All right, Burb out.